So you've booked your trip to New Orleans. Now what? Follow my lead as we explore all the magical musical must-dos in the Big Easy. Before we start, make sure you've already checked out my video about things to know before you go. You can click on it right now on the top right corner of your screen or in the video description below. Let's start off strong with some local attractions. In fact, 90% of NOLA's best known attractions are situated in or around the famed French Quarter. Near the site where the city of New Orleans was founded in the 17th century, you can now find Louis Armstrong Park, one of the city's largest green spaces honoring the New Orleans native jazz great. In fact, right inside is Congo Square, regarded by many as the very birthplace of jazz when it was a gathering place for enslaved people in the 1800s. A few blocks away, you'll find the house of Marie Laveau, probably the most famous voodoo practitioner. Tradition has it to leave a hair tie on her window bars, paying respect to the hairdresser that is better known as the Queen of Voodoo. Making your way through the centuries-old streets, you'll eventually end up at Jackson Square. Reminiscent of city squares in Europe, it's a lively gathering place where music and art take center stage. A stone's throw away is the world-famous Café du Monde, the perfect place to stop for a snack consisting of fresh French beignets and café au lait. Especially if you have limited time in NOLA, just taking a stroll and getting lost in the French Quarter's cobblestone streets is an adventure in and of itself. You never know what you might stumble across. I was fortunate enough to visit during the city's annual Red Dress Run, where everyone, and yes, I mean everyone, dresses up in a red dress. It started off as a charity race, but locals and tourists alike join in for general festivities afterwards. If you love history, storytelling, and can stand walking around in the sweltering heat, I can't recommend taking a voodoo walking tour enough. I booked ours through French Quarter Phantoms, and our guide Wolfie was fantastic. He really brought the history of the city to life and was able to answer all of our quirky and spooky questions. Taking a nighttime stroll in the French Quarter could have you bumping into a jazz wedding celebration complete with fireworks, a parade to the reception venue, and of course, a marching band. Now, I've talked extensively about the French Quarter, but let's take a look at another neighborhood that exudes just as much New Orleans charm, but in a more lush and understated way: the Garden District. You'll find tree-lined streets with magnificent historic mansions and charming cottages. Looking for a shopping district? Look no further than Magazine Street for local boutiques and eateries. Speaking of eateries, let's finally talk about food! And boy, do I have some restaurant recommendations for you to try out. Let's start with breakfast. The Ruby Slipper is a classic. They started out as a humble diner in New Orleans and now have a chain of over 20 restaurants in the South. And don't worry, success has not affected the quality of their food. It's still surprisingly scrumptious. If you're a coffee fanatic and love the planet, you'll want to stop by Coffee Science, NOLA's only zero-emission coffee roaster. And they have great matcha lattes too. You won't be able to get a much more New Orleans experience than the Court of Two Sisters with their jazz brunch buffet that's available every single day of the week. If you have a special occasion, let them know, as the jazz band might even serenade you at your table, or better yet, if you have a singer in the bunch, maybe they could join in as a vocalist in a jazz classic. Truly an unforgettable experience. Your go-to lunch should be a po' boy sandwich, perfect for sightseeing on the go and tasty too. For dinner, I have some great choices for you. Try Ralph's on the Park for an intimate evening with eclectic local cuisine set in a house built in the 1860s. Another great option for local cuisine, right in Jackson Square, is Muriel's, steeped in history and said to even inhabit some friendly ghosts. But if you have only one night to spend in New Orleans, make a reservation at Antoine's. This place is a literal museum with tons of old world charm and serving French Creole cuisine, which was to die for. So much so that I forgot to take footage of it. It's also the birthplace of Oysters Rockefeller. Let me tell you, it's a good thing that they taste better than they look. Before leaving, make sure you ask your waiter for a tour of the premises. There are so many interesting rooms and secrets to discover. No matter your age or whether you have introverted or extroverted tendencies, if you're in New Orleans, you have to spend a night on the town. I'm admittedly a little bit of a homebody myself, but going out on Bourbon and Frenchmen Street is some of the most fun I've ever had. Some establishments I recommend seeking out on Frenchmen Street are Maison, Bambula's, and the Spotted Cat. If you want to get away from the loud music and crowds, but still reel in the ambiance of Frenchmen Street, check out Frenchman Art and Books, the only bookstore I've ever seen with a dedicated drink tray to hold your beverage as you peruse, and Frenchman Art Bazaar, a nightly art market open from 7 till midnight. As for Bourbon Street, my favorite places were definitely Fritzl's European Jazz Bar with their mesmerizing 5-piece band, and Lafitte's Blacksmith Shop with their Piano Man open mic and charming washboard player. Oh, and you gotta try their Voodoo daiquiri, but beware of the brain freeze. There you have it, the best that New Orleans has to offer. I absolutely loved my time in this gorgeous and historic city, and I know you will too. Happy travels.